So in this video, I want to show you a different way to assemble, and I kind of want to explore what happens if you mess up in the beginning and you don't make separate components to assemble. And so let's mess up intentionally in the beginning. Let's start a new sketch and go to our front face. And let's draw a circle. And let's make this circle 5 inches in diameter. And what I want to create is a Pokeball. So I'm going to grab my line tool, and I want to make myself a vertical line all the way down the center. And then I want to tell this line to be coincident with that center point to make a fully constrained sketch. I'm going to hit Finish Sketch, and then I'll hit Revolve. I want this profile to revolve around this axis, and hit OK. And so now I have a perfect sphere, but it's just one piece. Now, a Pokeball, in theory, would be hollow and empty on the inside, like me, and so we will find our shell tool and modify, and I'm going to select this body, and I'm going to tell the thickness to be about, I don't know, let's say a 1/4 inch, so 0.25 inches, and hit OK. And so now if we hover over our shell, you can see it's hollow and empty on the inside. We can't really see it yet, although you will see it in a little bit. But trust me, if that little shell is there, it is empty on the inside. So what's next? Well, the next thing I need to do is cut it in half. I need to separate it into 2 different bodies, something that I haven't already done. And it's actually not that hard. All we need to do is put a work plane down in the center. And so I'm going to go to Construct and go to Offset Plane. And I'm going to select this plane right here. And I'm going to tell it to be 0 inches, so it's right in the center. So what do I mean? I mean it's right in the middle of my part. And so now I'm going to go to Modify, and I want to go to Split Body. And I want to select this body to split into 2. And what splitting tool do I want to use? Well, I want to use that work plane that I just selected. But I can't find it. I can't really get it because it's inside of my sphere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find Construction over here and find that plane that I just created for myself. And now you'll see that it's going to split it in half right there along that work plane. I'm going to hit OK. And so now I have 2 separate bodies. But you may recall we don't need different bodies to do assemblies. We need different components. And so now that I've separated them into 2 separate bodies, I can then go to my Create, and I can go to a new component, and I can turn these bodies into individual components. So I'll select from bodies, and I'll select both bodies, and hit OK. And now I have 2 new components. And so I'm going to go ahead and ground the bottom component. So I'm going to right click on whichever component is the bottom face, right click and go to ground. And ground is above move and copy. You probably can't see it in the video right now, but hit the ground button. And so now the bottom face can't move and the top face can. And okay, what's next? Well, I'm going to go back to my construction. I'm going to turn that work plane off just to get it out of my way. You can turn it back on if you need it later. But I want it off so it's not showing up. And then I want to cut out a hole for the button of a Pokeball. So I'm going to go back to Construct. I'm going to go to Offset Plane. And this time I'm going to select my front face and I want to drag it out. And how far do I want to drag it out? Well, this thing is, 5 inches in diameter, so negative 2.5 would probably do the trick. That would give me that radius, which would make it tangent with my face. I'll hit OK. And then I want to start a sketch right here on this plane that I just created for myself. I'm going to grab my circle tool and I'm going to make sure it's coincident with my origin. I'm going to drag, and I'll tell this to have a diameter of 0.75 and hit enter. Now I will finish my sketch. I'm going to hit extrude, and I want to cut through. And I'll say what distance. I want to go all the way through. Oh, no, I don't want to go all the way through. So let's just say some distance, and let's, I don't know, 0.6 is fine, probably. Hit OK. That way I know it's going through that piece there. And so now I've got this top piece and this bottom piece. The bottom piece shouldn't be able to move, and I should have a hole made for myself. So I'm going to move this over just a little bit, and I'm going to go to my Assemble, and I'm going to go to Joint. I'm going to hit Capture Position because I want them to be off-center so I can find the places. I'm going to go to the back, and then towards the bottom. And I'm going to find the back and bottom of this top piece. Right there, once it clicks or once it magnetizes, I'm going to click. And then where do I want to lock it onto? Well, I want to lock it onto this right here. Now, it should already be in rigid, although it might be set on a different one. If it's already set on a different one, that's fine. Go ahead and switch your motion to revolution. Now, I don't want it to spin along this axis. And so if you look on the z-axis, apparently it's spinning this direction. So I'm going to try the x-axis. And that's more to my liking. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And I can play with it a little bit. But if you notice, it's going through it. I don't want it to go through that other part. And so we could go in and find that joint and edit the joint limits and figure out the exact degrees I want it to spin. Or instead, we can try a different thing. We can go to Assemble, and we can go to Enable Contact Sets. And so this should open a new option in your browser called Contact Sets. Go find it, right-click, and go to New Contact Set. And I'm going to select these two bodies. And what this will do is it'll tell these two bodies or these two components to never intersect. And so now that I hit OK, if you look, it will not intersect. And so now it's impossible for it to go through that part. Okay, so what's next? Well, I need my button for myself. So how do I get that button? Well, I'm going to go back in and find that previous sketch. So let me close out my construction and go back and find that sketch that created that circle. Because I've already got the geometry for it. I'm going to turn it on. And then I'm going to go to Extrude. And I'm going to hit Continue because I don't want this to change. I want this to be completely closed. And I'm going to extrude this both directions. And so how do I do that? So I need to go from one side to two sides. And I don't want it to be a joint. I want this to be a new component. So I'm going to go down to New Component. And I'm going to drag this out. Oh, I don't know. Let's say 0.1 inches. And I can drag it in. 0.3 is probably good. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe 0.4. And then I'm going to hit, that's 0.3. I'll go to 0.4. And I'll hit OK. So now I've got this new part that can go inside. I'm going to turn off that geometry for sketch 2 and I'll go ahead and close that. So now I've got this button for myself. I'm going to go back to Assemble, select Joint. I'm going to hit Continue. Excuse me, I'm not going to hit Continue. I'm going to go to Capture Position because I want this to stay outside. I'm going to go to Capture Position. I'm going to select this piece. And I'm going to select my bottom face. I guess I'm going to hover my bottom face. And I want it to magnetize to the center. Once it's magnetized to the center, I'm going to click. But I don't want it to revolve. I want to change it to a slider. So now it slides in and out. And hit OK. And then I can play with my joint limits, right? And so I go find this joint, this slider joint. I'm going to go to Edit Joint Limits. And I'm going to give it a minimum. Let's say its minimum is, I don't know. Let's say it's -1. Oh, that's way too much. Let's try -0.1 and see if that's any better. And that looks way better. And what do I want its maximum to be? Well, I want its maximum to be, let's say, -0.2. Oh, I know. That's wrong. I want it to be +0.2. And so that it goes in. And then I want its rest to be back here at -0.1. And it looks like I gave its minimum a little bit too high. Let's change that to -0.1. And I want this to stay at +0.2. Make sure these three numbers are all correct. Hit OK. And you just kind of play with it until you figure it out, right? So now let's see what happens. Okay, I can push this in so the ball goes in. And I can open this and oops, it looks like the button is on the wrong end. So let's see if we can fix that. We'll go back to our slider 2 and we'll go to Edit Joint. Not the joint limit, but the joint. And I want to change my second face that I selected. And so I'm going to go and close this out. And instead, I'm going to tell it to not be on the bottom face, on the bottom half, but on the top half and select it at the center and hit OK. And so now when I open it, it stays together. And then you can open up your appearance yourself by hitting A and mess with the colors a little bit if you want on both components. But there you have it. We have a fully assembled, fully functioning Pokeball.